Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Brown, Senior Director of Solutions Marketing and Head of CISO Engagement here at Trellix. And I'm joined by one of our partners, Aamil Karimi from Optiv, to have a little bit of a discussion around operationalizing threat intelligence. Our partner community is very important to us, and Optiv has been a long-standing partner with Trellix. So I'm very excited to have this opportunity to speak with Aamil today. But before we jump into some of our discussion, let's just frame things up a little bit. Trellix recently conducted another round of our Mind of the CISO research. The topic for this research study was really around threat intelligence and specifically operationalizing threat intelligence. And while it's interesting to see that a vast majority of the respondents indicated a struggle or some type of struggle with operationalizing threat intelligence. In fact, it was around 98% of the 500 respondents around the globe to our survey said they're having some type of challenge with operationalizing threat intelligence, be it resource challenges, be it process challenges, integration challenges, technical and people issues really came to the forefront as part of the results of the survey. The good news is that we have some ideas, we have some solutions, and we can, together with our partners like Optiv, can help make the reality better around capitalizing on the threat intelligence assets that you own today, and really focusing on how threat intelligence is integrated more effectively into your cyber threat program. So with that backdrop, I'm going to introduce Aamil. Aamil, do you want to introduce yourself from your role at Optiv, please?
Sure. Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everybody. Yes, my name is Aamil Karimi. I'm the principal consultant here with our Global Threat Intelligence Center at Optiv. I've been practicing intelligence analysis since about 2004, since my Army days, and I've been in the cybersecurity world since about 2012. So a lot of the challenges that you presented here are based off of a lot of empirical evidence, as well as just professional experience dealing with setting up intelligence programs and working around the intelligence process for cybersecurity companies, as well as customers. So this is a good opportunity. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Aamil. So let's launch right in. Trellix recently hosted a virtual summit around operational threat intelligence, and we heard from some people within the industry, some analyst community. We also heard from some of our customers around their challenges. But I think you are perfectly positioned as a key partner of Trellix to give us your perspective, because you do things that help customers operationalize threat intelligence, help them build their TI program. So let's dive into that a little bit. Just give us your perspective. Why do you think, from your unique view, that organizations are really having trouble implementing their cyber threat intelligence programs? What are some of the things that you observe working with your customers that have been revealed through those efforts that maybe you could comment on for us, Aamil? Give us your take.
Absolutely. So I believe a lot of the common issues we're seeing, and I read through the report and I was kind of, I shouldn't say pleased, but it was good to see that there was alignment around the problems that we're kind of seeing, and then the responses that are coming directly from CISOs and leaders that are looking to implement CTI. So working with a lot of our customers and having experience working in a CISO shop myself, a lot of the problems that we see around implementing CTI to its full potential, a lot of times there isn't a formal program or objective that's outlined. Another thing we're seeing is that there is the tendency to be very reactive to what's being reported, or to cybersecurity media, or to even geopolitical events sometimes, instead of just focusing on their environment, how their organization is set up. And then another thing that we're seeing missing is that there isn't that implementation of measuring the effectiveness, the quality of the effectiveness of your CTI program, or prioritizing the types of output. Now, what do I mean by not having a formal program or objective? what is the reason for your program, right? Your mission statement. These things include who your CTI team is serving or helping, what your priority requirements are, setting up proper guidelines and boundaries over collection, analysis, and distribution efforts, or just having a roadmap to your maturity, right? So we're here at, at A, we want to get to Z. How do we get there? And so they have this kind of foggy idea of what Z looks like, but there isn't a step-by-step roadmap to get there. With regards to all this information flooding that we're getting, being reactive to the media, geopolitical events, cybersecurity news, whatever it might be, I think it's more important to be more proactive, and being proactive starts with just being more in tune and familiar with what's running in your own environment. I think there's this urge to react to news flashes without assessing whether that threat is actually relevant to you, or without looking for additional context around that. Sometimes geopolitical incidents spiral into cybersecurity issues. Sometimes they're relevant, sometimes they're not, but the CTI teams do get inundated with questions that detract them from what their core mission is. And so we're trying to frantically, answer these questions that are outside of those established requirements that we should have. And then again, being proactive about what's in your environment, having those established priority intelligence requirements, having situational awareness of your own assets and your environments, and having some context around past events and building trust with leadership, that can really help your intelligence efforts to help you stay grounded and relevant. And then the third thing I mentioned was effectiveness and your output. These are two key fundamental metrics, I strongly believe, that help gauge the maturity and the utility of a CTI program. I believe that if leaders are helping guide or lead a CTI effort within your organization, reframing your program around the effectiveness quality and your output objectives will really help alleviate a lot of that fog around how to mature, up-level your CTI program.
Yeah, great points. And as a former CISO myself, a lot of what you were talking about rings true to me in my own experience, but also, as you pointed out, aligns with many of the findings that we had in the Mind of the CISO survey. I mean, there are a couple of key things that I really heard from you, which is potentially a lack of formalized program. Okay, so everyone's going to have their own unique position on where they are in terms of a program, developing a program, fine. But I think one of the things that you said that really resonated with me, Aamil, was the lack of measurability, the lack of, being able, maybe if you have an idea around being able to plot a maturity journey, how do you measure that as you go along? And one of the things that was highlighted in our recent virtual summit was the development of something like the CTI CMM, the CTI capability maturity model is one of those kind of emerging practices that can help CISOs with their mapping and their ideas and creating something of a structure. But what I really want to focus on is your unique value as Optiv, as a partner of Trellix. You highlighted some really key challenges and some struggles that I think many organizations will listen to and think, okay, yeah, that's exactly right. And they're going to place themselves somewhere along that curve of, program development to maturity and measuring. Great. Let's pivot a little bit and talk about what are maybe 3 things that organizations can improve or do better, particularly stemming from your experience as a partner delivering out services and capabilities and all the things that Optiv does to help their customers. Give us some insight into what are those 3 things that organizations can do to improve, to move the needle, that maybe you as Optiv present some unique value on. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, sure thing. So I think the 3 key points that really come to mind is, again, that proactivity versus reactivity, focusing on high-risk software asset prioritization and asset visibility. I know those are termed, asset inventory, things like that are thrown around, and sometimes we get the eye roll because it can be difficult if you have a large organization. And then again, touching on aligning your output with the effectiveness and the overall business objectives. In talking about being proactive versus reactive, The proactivity parts applies to both research as well as the defense and risk management side. There are things that a CTI team or intelligence analyst just can't do, right? We can't predict the unknowns. We can't predict things like 0 days because that's what they are. They're 0 days. We can't predict things like very bespoke or very customized malware. And a lot of times these are the things that kind of make the news headlines. But we can't predict things that just happen and have not occurred in the past, right? We don't have a pattern. We don't have an established baseline. So, we're not Miss Cleo to kind of bring up the 90s for anyone that was born in the 80s and remembers those. But we get treated like that. And I think that's a struggle that CISOs and CTI teams have trouble with, is that we're expected sometimes to answer any and all questions and have all the answers. It really doesn't work that way, but I think a good starting point is to be proactive with what we can control. We can control our research, right? We have historical context to identify the behaviors or the indicators that just seem to recur across multiple threat actors and campaigns over time. The tooling, their objectives, the various techniques, we can use those to create at least a starting point for proper defense and dev postures. I think this is more fundamental than reacting to emerging or fringe threats. 0 days do make the news, but I think, tracking vulnerabilities like Microsoft Equation Editor, which is still being used. It's a vulnerability from 2017. So using the historical information and processes and procedures that threat actors are still using time and time again from the past, that's at least a good starting point to start helping your operational teams with defense and the postures. Another thing I brought up was focusing your research on high-risk software and asset prioritization. Again, this does involve a little bit of retrospection and research that supports risk, it supports IT, it supports vulnerability management. CTI at the end of the day is a support role. We're not operational. We're not pulling the trigger. We're just advising and we're making recommendations based off of our analysis and assessments to the operational teams. So a sound threat and risk management posture, that really just starts with knowing how and what the threat actors are commonly exploiting and targeting, in terms of products, protocols, services, and then mapping what we know the threat actors are going after to what you're actually running in your environment. So now you can start operationalizing your intelligence because you're supporting those operational functions like patch management, threat hunting, least privilege policies, detection engineering, and all of that will actually be relevant to your organization instead of chasing something that may or may not be true to you. And then again, going back to effectiveness and output, who are you trying to protect? Everyone, honestly, right? You're trying to protect your HR team. You're trying to protect the folks in IT, your legal, your customers if you're a vendor. And then how are you measuring success? What is your output influencing across the organization with regards to guidelines, procedures, standards, policies, the language that senior leaders are familiar with? What are the significant threats that are unique to each team or department? Your HR team might be more at risk to a BEC type of attack. Folks in your IT team or on your help desk might be more prone to manipulation from groups like Scatter Spider. So what are their techniques? So sometimes customizing your requirements and customizing your intelligence output for certain business units is also an effective way to kind of show the utility of your CTI program. What type of intelligence do various business teams or units need to be effective or operational, right? So this goes in line with your output and effectiveness. This is how you can measure effectiveness of your CTI program. And then I think, how does your tactical, situational awareness intelligence help? Who are your operational teams? Is your strategic intelligence driving your corporate-wide security measures, right? So again, aligning your intelligence output and effectiveness to the language and objective of the overall organization and the senior leadership and the decision makers, if we align those two together, that really increases the chance for long-term support and buy-in from leadership to keep your CTI program going.
I love that. I love that. I love the commentary around proactive versus reactive. And sometimes I think we get a little bit caught up on making it bigger than it really is. And sometimes the proactive piece is really just quelling the noise of the things that you know you can do and can take out of the perspective of, is this a concern? So that there, you can do what you can. And the reactive piece, your point is salient about 0 days. We can't predict the unknown, but you're always going to have a little bit of that reactive component to your CTI program, but focus on the proactive to try and make sure that it's effective as possible, number one. Number two, that ability to understand your assets, their criticality, have them mapped, and know what the potential downstream effects of any circumstance are, that fits very well within your risk evaluation perspective and allows you to profile the risk better. And then that last one, I love that alignment with the business, because your points were great there, that the difference in types of attacks between HR and IT are very relevant and need to be understood. Some great points. Love the commentary. Aamil, I really want to thank you for your time today. I think this is a great conversation. I love the perspective you brought in. Look, for any of our audience today, if you'd like to connect with us or learn more about how Trellix and Optiv can help you, please do check out the links that we've included. And we would love to connect with you and talk about how our respective organizations, both Trellix and Optiv, can help you with your CTI programs. Aamil, thank you very much. Been a great discussion today. Really appreciate your time. From Trellix, thank you. Look for us again here on LinkedIn, and we'd love to connect with you outside of this forum. Get in touch. Thanks very much.
Thank you.